Okay, we'll go ahead and call the Harrison Wallace Drain Reconstruction hearing to order. Zach?
Thank you, Mr. President. As President Brown mentioned earlier, if you're here before the Harrison Wallace County Regulated Drain Reconstruction hearing, if you have not already done so, please sign the sign-in sheets so we have a list of the folks that attended today. With that said, I'll go ahead and begin by reading the reconstruction report. Harrison Wallace Regulated Drain number 82 reconstruction report dated November the 1st, 2022. A petition to reconstruct the Harrison Wallace Regulated Drain number 82 was accepted by the Tippecanoe County Drainage Board and referred to the county surveyor for a reconstruction report on January 13th of 2020. The Harrison Wallace Regulated Drain number 25, actually scratch that, it should be 82, Scrivener's error, was originally established by the Tippecanoe County Circuit Court, case number 6054, file box number 674 on April 19th, 1902. The drain and its watershed are located in sections 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 22, and 23 of Township 21 North and Range 6 West in the political township of Jackson, Tippecanoe County, Indiana. The drain currently consists of approximately 43,680 lineal feet of main tile and numerous branch tiles. There is no open ditch associated with this drain, and the main tile outlets into Shawnee Creek. The watershed area contains 1,783.99 acres. The Harrison Wallace Regulated Drain Maintenance Fund was originally established by the Tippecanoe County Drainage Board on September 7th, 1971. The Tippecanoe County Drainage Board increased the annual maintenance assessment by 25% in 2005 as authorized by Indiana Code 36-9-27-42 and Resolution 2005-01DB. The annual maintenance rate was increased to $4.25 per acre and a $20 minimum at a maintenance hearing on August the 7th of 2013. I have personally walked, drove, talked, and met with landowners and inspected the Harrison Wallace Regulated Drain system per the request of the landowners who signed the petition. Based on the needs of the petitioners in this watershed, it is my professional recommendation that portions of the existing tile system be removed and replaced with new tile. Additionally, NDOT will pay 100% of the cost to replace the two tile lines under State Road 25. The new tile will include 3,850 linear feet of 36-inch diameter tile, 5,288 linear feet of 30-inch diameter tile, 4,412 linear feet of 24-inch diameter tile, and 1,500 linear feet of 18-inch tile, 1,037 linear feet of 15-inch, and 1,381 linear feet of 12-inch tile combined with other miscellaneous items. It is the expert judgment of the Tippecanoe County Surveyor that a sum of approximately $1,116,744.50 is needed to reconstruct and improve the Harrison Wallace Regulated Drain System. NDOT will pay a one-time lump sum total up to $168,000. The remaining $948,744.50 will be paid by the benefit of landowners within the watershed. There will be approximately 38,976 linear feet of tile under maintenance after completion of this project. The existing old tiles that will be replaced shall be vacated. Branch 2 and Branch 13 shall also be vacated. An assessment of $107 per acre and a $50 minimum over a 5-year period is recommended. This will generate $954,591.45 over a 5-year period. Assuming the reconstruction and improvements are completed and the General Drain Improvement Fund has been repaid after the 5-year period, the Tippecanoe County Surveyor recommends that the annual maintenance rate remain at $4.25 per acre and a $20 minimum with an 8-year collection total as established at the August 7th, 2013 maintenance hearing. Respectfully submitted, Zach Beasley.
Okay, any questions for Zach? Doug, anything else? Take public comment?
Yep.
Well, this is the point in time in the hearing then we would like to hear from the public that are in attendance today. So we would ask that be sure, one, that you've already signed in and we've collected that information. And I guess I'd like to hear first from the folks who are opposed to the project. So if anyone is opposed to the project, please feel free to step to the podium.
Hit the button so the light turns on or the mic so the.
Right there?
Yep.
Yeah. We've got a farmland in this,
Sir,
but I've also,
could you, just so that we know, would you state your name, please?
Dan Best,
Thank you, Dan.
but I've also got 2 houses sitting here that's being appraised with absolutely no benefit. My houses are not going to benefit from this drainage system, but it's going to cost me a pretty penny to help support the people that want it. And so I want to be on record that the one tile you're going to vacate is the only tile that could help me at all. And it has got a wet spot on the east side of State Road 25 right now. So it's not helping me at all. And this thing, when they get this one done, are these people going to want something else done and then we have to start all over again? So.
Just curious if you could glance at the map up there and tell us which property is your location?
Your map is so darn confusing. It'd be at AK, DC.
Okay,
AK, that
thank you.
area.
Okay, thank you.
And that little short stretch right there is what you're vacating, and that's the only tile there that would ever do me any good at all if it did any and stuff. So that's what I've got to say is, I mean, my neighbors want this done. There's about, 3 or 4 big ones there, and they're the ones wanting it done, and the rest of us little guys are going to have to help pay for it. So I debate on whether we need the 36-inch if we just get that 20-inch and the other one running like it used to run stuff. I've been back there where those tiles dump into the ditch, into the creek, and there's never a full flow coming out of any of them. So that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Dan. Anyone else?
Brian Best, same owner as Dan, except a couple other tracks. I'll just read my objection letter. I'll make it record for everybody. I'm property owner of 5 tracts named in the schedule of assessments filed by the Tippecanoe County Surveyor, which he has labeled AK and AL combined, AM, AN, AO, AP. The state key numbers are such and such. There, it's on record. These properties, as shown on the same report, is to be deeded owner being Harmison Family Irrevocable Trust, the et al. The deeded owners are 13 individuals, all family members and trust whose beneficiaries are also the same family members. I've been in contact with all the family members and the trust representative, and we are all in agreement that an objection to this project must be filed. We all believe that the so-called benefits assessed against our land is excessive. A total of $56,102.25 in costs that we're proposed to be assessed and required to pay exceeds the financial benefit that we will receive by the same amount, as it will not increase the productivity of our land or increase its value. Most of our family is elderly, and the requirement to pay this amount will present a financial hardship. The fact that we have to file this written objection to protect our right to further object or appeal the decision you make seems a bit unfair. Seems that any affected landowner being silent is being counted as a positive vote to be in favor of this project, which cannot be assumed, or at least should not be assumed. How many landowners are on record of favoring this project, or acres owned is apparently the standard being used, so how many acres are on record as being in favor? And I mean on record, because in the informal meeting we were told that, well, some people were in favor of it, but they didn't want to put their name on record as being in favor of it. I don't know the reasoning behind that. Now that the cost is a known estimated number, the petitioners cannot be assumed as being in favor. The surveyor talks about the needs of the petitioners in his November 1, 2022 letter. What are those needs? How are they being damaged? How much of the financial loss do they incur, and how much financial gain do they stand to benefit if this project's $1,116,744.50 is approved and spent? Our land is located on the south end of this, which means we do not even use or benefit from most of the tiling. The fact that the assessments are based solely on acreage seems unfair, as it has nothing to do with the actual usage of the tile. Why is it not based on the volume of water removed and the capacity and length of the tile the landowner actually uses? Total it all for each tract, percentage it to the length of the tile the landowner actually uses, total it all each tract, percentage it to the landowner's used number, and apply the percentage to the dollars being spent. The notice of the hearing states there is a schedule of damages and benefits. It states right here that you are hereby notified that a landowner, where are we? You are hereby, okay, hearing on the reconstruction report and the schedule of damages and benefits of the Tippecanoe County Surveyor. I have not seen any schedule of damages or benefits, and if it says there that it's required, I guess I am asking why it's not there for us to see, because I would think that there should be a schedule of benefits that are to be received. I don't know what, I'm getting off my track here, I don't know what capacity, can I ask a question at this point? What capacity is the current ditch functioning at? Of 100% that is required by apparently some landowners, what capacity percentage is it functioning at?
Are you asking me that question, Fran?
Anybody on the board that has the ability to answer?
Yeah, well, I'll answer it. So it depends on where you're talking about and depends on what branch. The main.
I'm talking about overall.
Please let me answer the question.
I will.
You asked me a question, the answer is this. On the main tile across the DeFreeze property and onto the highway property, the tile is broke down in multiple locations, it's blowing water out on the ground, so in that particular location, it's working from 0 capacity to maybe 10-15% at best, okay? On some of the branch tile, it's working 50%, 75%, but most of the branch tile that feed into it go right through that main tile. So it's choking down a very large percentage of the watershed. So that's the answer. It's in terrible condition, friend.
What is our maintenance fund going towards?
We have put Band-Aids on it for years, and there is no more Band-Aid to put on it. And I'll let the landowners talk about it. They can tell you firsthand.
So
Probably
you're saying
better
it's
than I
working
can.
at 0%?
In some locations, absolutely.
But
Yes.
overall of this project, of the scheduled, the watershed tiling system.
The reconstruction project.
Is it working at 90%?
The reconstruction project as presented is to take care of the locations that are not working. Remember, we presented the full build-out or the full reconstruction, and that was decided by the landowners not to go that route. This project as presented is to take care of the non-functioning portions of this watershed, period. It's the bare minimum that needs to be done to bring it back into functioning order.
Okay. Let me continue. Where was I? Okay, I would think that the sense of professional opinion of the Tippecanoe County Surveyor states this money needs to be spent by us landowners. He has a computation that shows the financial benefits will exceed the cost involved. If this was being decided by as a true business decision, I cannot see many landowners being in favor of it. It seems to me it's a case of the I wants by a farmer who should have known the capabilities of the land when he acquired it, wanting something more and finding a way to get others to pay for it. Would it not be more fair for all landowners to revert back to the way it was in the beginning and each landowner pays his own way? The expenditures will be coming out of the landowner's finances, not any non-landowner farmer who may benefit without any money being out of his pocket. The decision to approve or cancel this project should be based on the affected landowners' input, not the input from non-landowner farmers or individuals. Another question that concerns me, Is the estimated cost of the project, which includes a 10% contingency amount. Is this a true part of the cost? During the informal meeting that this project, we were told the total, if the total was not spent, any landowner could request some additional work to be done on his property in order to spend all the money. Could this 10% contingency of $86,249.50 be used for this purpose? If so, will the landowners be notified of this possibility to improve our land at the expense of all other affected landowners within the scope of the project? With all the cost increases of necessary personal living expenses and economic uncertainties beyond our control, it does not seem to be a time to move forward with this project. This is not tax dollars being spent. It is individuals who will feel the economic hardship caused by diverting dollars they need to a project that has no return on their expenditure. Climate change may cure part of this problem in the near future. It's beyond our control, but should still be considered. This letter started out as a statement, a bare minimum to object to this project, as stated in the notice of assessments. I apologize for the length, but I am one of the elderly affected landowners, and I'm passionate about being objecting to this project, so I want my objection to be clear. I'm a landowner named in the schedule of assessments. This is my written objection, and I'm stating that the benefits assessed against my land are excessive. Thank you for your time in considering this objection letter, the financial hardship the approval would create, which is an estimated number at this point and will probably be higher, weighed against the unknown to me benefits that may be achieved if it is approved. If this project is to cure a few wet spots in some affected fields, the losses cannot exceed these cash expenditures. It would be a bad business decision for us and most other affected landowners. Hopefully they will also file objections and their reasons, which may vary from mine. And since I'm up here, I think you addressed the contingency amount, Zach, when I was in the other day. It seems if the estimate is for that amount less that contingency, why is that amount not what we're paying? Why is there a 10% unknown that we have to pay out of our pockets at this point? Seems like we're paying for something that...
Well, a lot of times your contingency is the unknown that's in the fields. If you're racing tile and all of a sudden you run into somebody who already has pattern tile, you got to make sure you hook it up. If all of a sudden you find a gigantic boulder that you got to move, it's the unknowns. It's like we have when we have projects on buildings and things. There's that unknown, and that's what the contingency is.
Okay,
So
but if you don't run into those things, you don't spend that $86,000, why don't we get it back?
Well,
It's coming out of our pockets. I was told it does not come back to us. It rolls into the drainage fund or
Well,
the
it'll-
maintenance
it'll
fund,
roll into the
which
main-
is a completely different fund
But
from
it-
the reconstruction
But it'll
fund,
roll into the
correct?
maintenance fund, which then, if that builds up faster, it cuts off sooner. So instead of having the maintenance being collected for 8 years, if you all of a sudden meet that peak, your maintenance can now get cut off 2-3 years earlier.
But why are us landowners having to pay that amount in advance? You have the capabilities of billing us for it, which is obvious because we're getting billed for it apparently when the project is done. Why are we having to pay an unknown amount in advance when you have the capabilities of assessing us for that if it happens? If it doesn't happen, if you don't have those contingencies pop up, we don't get billed. It's not out of our pockets. So why do we have to put a deposit down? And if it's not used, we don't get it back.
In the long run, you are getting it back.
In the long run, we may not own that property in the long run. So why are we current
But
property
in the
owners?
long run, if you have fields that are draining, the value increases of those fields, if you're looking at selling.
So if I get an appraisal done today, and I get an appraisal done after this ditch project is done, you're saying that appraiser is going to show an increased dollar amount of my land?
Well, I also know farmers will pay a higher cash rent when there's good tile out in the field. So there is value on tile.
I understand
I
there
do
is
know that
value.
part.
I'm saying that on the south end, where we receive absolutely no benefit, we're being asked to pay $56,000 for something that we receive no return.
No,
on
I
whatsoever.
can understand what you're dealing with, because we had a project up in Shelby Township. My in-laws had a 42-inch tile, go right through them, and it cost them $70,000, and they got zero benefits. I understand what you're feeling, what you're thinking.
Yeah,
So-
and I did ask the surveyor about the billing being based strictly on acreage, being based on just strictly the acreage owned within the watershed as opposed to the usage and the benefits from it. And I was just told that's the way it's always been done. I asked to see, what that was based on, because if that's the way it's always been done, either it's in black and white that it's to be done that way, or somebody interpreted something back in this 1902 or whatever the law, when the law was written to take care of this ditch, what somebody interpreted to be done as an equitable way. And based on usage, it's not equitable. I have some questions on the bid letting too, but I'll let somebody else speak. If you have got any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Brian.
Fran?
Anyone in favor of the project?
Or opposed.
Or opposed?
Morning.
Good morning.
I'm Jason Carlson. I'm a landowner up in the northwest corner of the watershed. It would be A, J, I, and L area. I'm also representing an out-of-state landowner, which is at the corner up there where the AU is. It'd be Janet Kingsbury. She has never been a part of this legal drain, never been charged. In any of the earlier maps, she's never been involved in it. Suddenly now she's involved in it. How did this become? And if she is going to be a part of it, I think she should have access to the tile, to the legal drain. I think it should come to her property. And I would propose that the red tile, which is an 8-inch that runs through my property, I would propose that that be ran on up to her property line and so she could have access to the tile. As far as I know, from what we have dug in that area, none of her water leaves her farm. It's more or less a bowl shape, and on some of the aerial maps, you can see where her pond is, where her drainage problem is. Her water cannot get out. The highway blocks her water from going east, and the county road 1000 blocks her water from going over onto the watershed on our side. There are no culverts. As far as I know, like I stated, from where we've dug, I cannot find any tile. I looked at the older maps, and I've never found anything going over there. I know there's a tile running along the highway. We have repaired that hole. They put a fiber optic cable in there a couple years ago, and they hit that tile when they were knifing that in, and we've had that repaired. But I don't know that that goes on across the county road 1000 on over towards her property. But I guess my main point here is if she's going to be paying on this, I think she should have access to the tile.
What was her name again?
Janet Kingsbury.
And what was your name again? I'm sorry.
I'm Jason Carlson.
Jason. Hi, Jason.
Yes.
I did get your letter, yeah.
So to kind of answer his question then, Zach,
Mhm.
I assume, and Jim might be able to answer back there too, I assume the maps were redone?
Yeah,
Once we
yeah.
kind of looked at this? Or
Yes,
whatever, or-
yes, I can answer that very, very easily. So the historical maps on these were based off of the 5-foot contour information that we had via the 7.5-minute quadrangle maps through the USGS, which was what the original maintenance fund was utilized back in the 70s. When we were looking at this in 2013, I guess it was, when we had I think it was the date that I had in August of 2013 when we had the maintenance hearing, we used the industry standard is to use the best available data, of the day, which today we have LiDAR information and hydrology information, 1-foot contour information, spot elevations. We have a plethora of information available to us, and so which is much more accurate than the information had back in the 70s. So that information was used to redelineate the watershed, which answers the first question: why she was in before, why she was out before and in now, because now the information is more accurate. And it shows the hydrology layer and the surface contour show that portion of the farm here in AU, that corner, would show it draining to the south or to the southeast into that watershed via surface. Now, keep in mind that county regulated drains in the state of Indiana, each parcel doesn't necessarily have to be traversed, across, or touched by part of the county regulated drain. You can be benefited by surface flow only. Now, if you're saying that there's no culverts or no way that the water can get across the road because the road right-of-way is acting as a barrier, we can take a look at that. Now, I can't make any promises, but I can tell you why it's in the watershed.
I don't know that the water could surface drain.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's kind of a bowl shape.
I understand. That also doesn't mean that there's not some private tile in there that's not servicing. Okay, so
yeah.
that's the answer to your questions. I will be happy to take a look at it. Some of these parcels that were out before and are shown being now, if there is just a steadfast reason that everybody can pass the red face test that it shouldn't be, that's a pretty difficult barrier to cross. But I would take a look at it and see if it's legitimate and we can defend it, then so be it. But if it can't be defended, then it's got to stay.
But she would be able to hook onto the legal drain if she did it privately later on.
Sure, if she can get access to it.
She is legally, she can hook onto that tile.
Absolutely, that's one of the reasons we put them in. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But now, as soon as I tell you that, now she would have to be able to solidify access across any other private landowner if she needed to get across somebody else's property to access it. That would be a private situation that they would have to take care of. So, okay.
Very good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else opposed?
David Weaver. We're down in the corner where the BW, BV, and that area where it cuts across just on 25 and 1100 South, right in there, right on that corner.
Right. Down just a little bit, right in here.
Right in there. Mr. Beasley, what I'd like to know, you told Fran Best that up on Howie in the freeze, 90% of that is plugged. I'd like to know from, let's see, from 1,000 or 1,050, how does it flow through there?
1,050.
How's the tile running through there? Is it running pretty good?
Here at your place, Dave?
Yep.
Yeah, on down across Mr. Lute's?
Yep.
That's what you're asking?
Yep.
Yeah, it is running pretty good as far as I can tell.
My
Yes.
answer is,
However, let me finish.
okay,
I can tell you it's under capacity based off of the current drainage coefficients in the industry, but go ahead. I just want to make
okay,
sure everybody
now, from
understands that.
1,050 up, I've been in some of that area, and the other area up in there, it's boggy. There's some of that ground, it's like any other farm ground. I don't care how long you own it or what it's like. There's just some it's not feasible to farm. Okay, my other question is, whatever happened to wetlands and all this government funding that used to be put in that, set aside? Maybe they can use that instead. Maybe they may not gain as much money, but the neighbors, like you said, up by Howie's and up in that area, to me, it's like somebody paying somebody else's hospital bill. It's not my problem. It's their problem. And to me, that's their problem. Yes, if it was down on our area and it was plugged that bad, I'd say, sure, yeah, maybe it might help out a little bit. But it's not It's not there. And I had a tile put in several years ago, cost me $80,000, and I'll tell you right now, the water is not flowing any better or draining any better out of that area since that tile went in. It was fine the way it was, but I had to pay because somebody else up above me wanted theirs drained off. Theirs is draining off fine, but I'm paying $80,000 for a tile that could have been left alone in mine, and I signed a piece of paper that they said they were going to do reconstruction. Next thing I knew, they was building a whole brand-new thing in there, brand new. Now, that was misrepresentation as far as I'm concerned. But I didn't have any say because I already put my name on the dotted line. But that
one are you
area
referring
you're
to?
talking about up in there, it's boggy.
Yes.
I got ground that's boggy, and I wouldn't dare farm it. And some of that ground was in pasture ground at one time.
So, Dave, a couple questions. Well, I guess a statement first. This area here, you're talking about north of 1,050, the boggy area,
Yes.
as you stated. You asked about government programs, wetlands, things like that. Just please know that those programs are outside of the county drainage board and/or the county surveyor's office. Those are all through NRCS and FSA and SWCD, as far as I'm aware of any government programs either through the Farm Bill or USDA.
But can some of the parties can they check into that?
They certainly can, but we have no statutorily involvement in any of that. That's a private matter between landowners and those agencies that I just mentioned.
Well,
so I can't speak to those. That's outside of the purview of what this body is here to do.
Well, I'm just saying, maybe they ought to be checked into, because I'll tell you what, there's a lot of farmers around, and fertilizer prices, chemicals, everything else, gasoline, everything's going up. And if that could be resolved by that for a while, till we see how the economy's going to straighten out, maybe it needs to be checked into. Because if some of this goes through, I'll tell you straight up, it's going to drive a wedge in feelings around through the community. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, but that can go both sides.
Well, whatever. Like they say,
I mean-
you know, you can be neighbors, but you don't have to be neighborly.
Right. Right.
So, again, Dave, the programs you talked about is outside this body. I can't speak to that. That's between individual landowners and those agencies and any other agencies that may be involved. But this body does not work with that. Getting back to the tile situation, this body is charged with following the Indiana Drainage Code, and by definition in the Indiana Drainage Code, this system meets the definition of reconstruction, which is why we're here today. So that answers that question. I'm not sure what tile you were referring to earlier. Was that a county project or was that
Yes.
private?
Yes.
Which one was that?
I can't, McKinney, I think it was. That's been about 3 or 4 years ago or so.
Was it down in this?
Yeah.
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 I think that was the Amanda Kirkpatrick.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So just, I'm not sure which piece of ground you're referring to, but I can tell you I've had 2 landowners on that project call me just within the last few weeks and say they've seen drastic improvements, at least on their property. Now,
Well, all
I
I'm
can't
saying
speak
is
to yours, but-
that they might have seen it, but from what they put through on me, it hadn't, I mean, it drains well. It was draining well before that. But it did not, I'm just saying, it did not benefit the cost that I put into it.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you, David. Anyone else opposed to the project?
My name's Larry Gamble. I'm not a landowner, but I'm a tenant farmer for Darrell Lutz, who's at the very west end of the project where it dumps into the open ditch. Okay, I've fixed the county tile many times, so I'm not disputing the fact that it needs replaced. I've repaired it many times. It's junk. Okay, but what my concern is, when it goes in the open ditch, and I met with Zach and Jim Butcher at Mr. Lutz's farm here earlier this fall, and they'll remember what our conversation, but my concern is where that open ditch goes through Fountain County. The ditch needs some work, some cleaned out, dredged, whatever, to make this whole project work better for the guys on, like David Weaver and some guys to see benefit that needs to be cleaned out down the road. I mean, and that's jumping into Fountain County. And Zach talked like that's not always the easiest process dealing with the other counties, but I think it's something that needs to be addressed some way if possible. And to make this whole 1,700-acre watershed drain better, you need to have a good outlet. And, like I say, and I've repaired the tile many times. It needs replaced. I don't have any money in it. I'm just a farmer. But Mr. Lutz is willing to do his part and pay. He's not totally against it, but he's unable to come today. But just something to think about is that where it crosses into Fountain County, if some way we could talk to their commissioners or something. I don't know how that process works. But, you got to have a good outlet to make all this work.
So Larry, right where at the very bottom, I'm zooming with the bottom yellow line, there's an open ditch from there where it empties out.
Right there, that's
And that
Mr.
county-
Lutz's property.
is that-
That's where it dumps into the open ditch.
Is that the county line right there?
I don't,
This is
That's the
right here, I
county
believe.
line.
it's a little
Okay.
further west.
Okay.
But starting there, that ditch needs to be cleaned and dredged or something, but you're getting in with Fountain County. So, and I've dealt with Fountain County, and they're not, but supposedly they are in the process of getting a surveyor, I heard. I don't know. Usually it's just your commissioners or their drainage board, and that's who I've had to deal with in the past. But anyway, just something to think about, FYI, okay? I knew Zach and Jim knew about it, but just want to make sure you guys knew about it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I would like to make a couple follow-up
Sure.
questions. So Larry, thank you for your comments, and I will confirm that, yes, myself and Jim Butcher met Larry Gamble and Darrell Lutz at Darrell's house. We had a very good meeting for quite some time one day a few months ago. Darrell and Larry and Darrell both brought up this concern as far as the open ditch. I did inform both of them, and I want to inform the board here today that while I don't dispute what Mr. Gamble's talking about, I actually happen to agree with him wholeheartedly. However, from a legal matter, the open ditch has never been part of the regulated drain, and so myself and/or this body, to my knowledge, doesn't have the legal ability to go in and clean that open ditch and/or use monies in the maintenance fund and/or reconstruction monies to work on the open ditch. That doesn't mean that it can't become part of the regulated drain, and I did explain that. What it would take, and Larry, this is kind of an answer to your statement. What it would take is that the landowners along that open ditch basically need to reach out to me, and they need to be willing to sign a petition to add that, and which would bring their land in this watershed, and they would be assessed, and then we would legally be able to do it. Without it being part of the regulated drain, I don't know how this body is legally going to be able to make that happen, unless it's just a gentleman's agreement with the landowners, but they would have to foot the bill, because I don't know where any monies would come from to do that. And so while I agree it would be a great idea and needs to be done, this body and/or myself doesn't have the legal capacity and/or the funds to do the work. I do know that, and Larry and I and Mr. Lutz talked about beaver dams on the Shawnee Creek, and I know that there's been some beaver dams removed historically, and the only way we can justify that is if it's backed water up onto the onto the tile outlet for this regulated drain. But I just wanted to give some more information on that. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else in opposition? Anyone in favor of?
No, I'm still opposed.
Hi, my name's Rob DeFries. I own property right in the center of the county tile where it's probably in the worst shape and gets affected the most. So I've worked with Zach for probably over 10 years on this tile, getting it repaired and going through the maintenance fund and ultimately getting to this point where we're looking at reconstruction. So I'm in favor for it. I feel like I will benefit from it, and I also feel like 100% of the landowners in the watershed will benefit from it. So thank you, Zach, for everything you've done and taught me how a watershed works and functions and hydrology and all that stuff. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Anyone else? This is anyone wanting to hear from the folks who are in favor of? Is there anyone else? Okay.
Let him back up.
Pardon?
Let him back up.
Come on, back up.
Okay, let's go to the cost on this, the 1.1 million. It's my understanding that that is just an estimated cost. And at this point, it's been determined by apparently the surveyor's office that that's a feasible number for the so-called benefits that are gained. I still see no financial benefit to even come close to that amount of an expenditure. And with it being an unknown number at this point, other than this estimated number that 10%'s already been added onto to get to it, if these bids are let and they all come in over that, what happens? Is one of them going to be accepted? And how high above that? Is there a mandate as far as you can't go more than another 10% over or 25% over? Or is this going to end up being a $2 million project that doubles the money out of our pockets? At what point does it become a non-project?
I guess I
And
can
is
say,
it based on cost?
I guess I can say, I think all of our bids, or all of our projects that we accepted bids, we haven't had any overestimated or overbidded. And if they are too much overbidded, we can ding the project. Which we do that on
If you
bridges.
define too much,
If we say it's too much over what the estimate is, and we've done this on roads, we've done it on bridges, and if estimates come in too high, we put the project back on the shelf, or we attempt to have it rebidded.
okay, but could you tell me what too much equates to? I'm an accountant, so I'm black and white. I'd like to know.
There is a number,
Yes.
and I'm sorry, I can't find the statute immediately. It's not more than 20%, but it might be 10%. And I can't remember which one of those is the statutory cap, but
But it is in there somewhere for us
Yeah.
to physically see?
yep.
Okay. I guess one other comment I would like to make is I've been into the surveyor's office with questions and been told that I need to consult legal advice, and if that's what we need to do, we will do it. And this law that created this in 1902 has been quoted a couple times as far as being the determining factor in using the acreage as the indicator for the assessments. I asked about it, if it's in black and white, and said, yes, it's in the law, but I was told it couldn't be provided to me. It was up to me to go look it up. I didn't think that was, since someone is doing the citing, which is Zach, this law and basing everything he's saying on it, and he has access to it, he knows where it is, I think it would have been cordial to provide me a copy of that. Now, let's go to the assessment. When we were told in the informal meeting that we would not get billed or assessed for this until the project was completed, and the number was a known number. Is that true?
Are you asking me, friend?
I'm asking anybody that can provide an answer.
I'm gonna answer the question. First of all, I take offense to what you just said. You come to my office, and I've provided multiple times, actually, over the last 2.5 years, and I've answered every one of your questions, with the exception of the legal questions that you've asked me. And what I said was, I'm not an attorney. If you have legal questions, you need to consult an attorney. Now, with that said, I also told you that the drainage code is 36-9-27. I mean, I told you exactly where it was at. Now, with that said, the third answer is this. The billing, yes. So the way the billing works, we do the project, we bid it, we do the project, and once the project is done and the bills are paid, then the following year, the treasurer's office sends those bills out, okay? So we will have the true number when the bills go out, okay? So the statement you made earlier when you were up here, that the landowners are going to front that contingency, that's not correct. And I've explained this at length before. So, yes, as I mentioned to you last week when you were in my office, I said, and I'm saying the same thing today as I said then, if this is approved today, this is over a $150,000 project, which means it has to be publicly bid. It has to be advertised and a whole laundry list of other things that I won't get into. First. Secondly, when it comes in, there is statute that Mr. Masson just stated that has overages and underages. If it's over a certain amount, it has to be kicked out by statute. If it's not, then the board can accept the lowest bid and move on. Once the job is done, and I explained this last week, that if it goes through on the time schedule that we are on currently, the project would be built in the summer of next year, 2023, and then wrapped up, towards the fall. The bills wouldn't go out until the spring, April, May of 2024. So if there, by chance, was a large deficit, as in, and what I mean by that is if the bid came in much lower than the estimate, then that would give this body time to have another hearing and adjust that assessment rate lower before the bills went out. And conversely, if the bill was much higher than that, it would give this body time to reconvene and possibly raise the rate. Historically, now obviously there's been a lot of inflation, but historically we've done a good enough job on our estimates. We have these numbers pretty well dialed in, and neither one of those scenarios I just described has been necessary, okay? Keep in mind that this is not numbers I pulled out of a hat or out of thin air. These numbers that are in the estimate are based off of the last publicly bid job we did, and it was just a few months ago. So these are accurate numbers with inflated costs or reflect inflation that has occurred in our society in the last several months. So I feel fairly confident. The only thing that could throw it out or cause it to be off is that if we have severe inflation from now until the time we bid the job, which I hope doesn't happen, but is always possible. So what I'm trying to say is that I feel very confident with the numbers we have. They're based off of competitive bid numbers just a few months ago this year. So they're not numbers out of thin air. And contingencies on any job within the construction industry is a very acceptable practice, and 10% tends to be on the low end, I can promise you. Usually it's 15, 20 or higher. So just FYI. Thank you.
You're welcome. So when it is assessed, is that going to be attached to our land at the 100%, which you've said we're going to be allowed to pay in 5 installments equally over 5 years? So will that 100% be assessed on our land if we were selling our land and the closing agent calls to get the real estate taxes? Is that remaining 80%, 60%, 40%, 20%? Is it going to show as a lien or assessment against our property at that time that will have to be paid out of the closing?
Yeah, so if you take the 5-year plan, that's in the nature of a separate agreement if you're not going to pay it up front, and so it'd look like a mortgage. I mean, so whatever.
It will show as
Yes.
similar to a lien on our property.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you said if we choose the 5-year option, I didn't see anything in this last presentation that we were given that there was another choice.
Well, the
Now, in the informal meeting, which I'm told I haven't remembered everything properly,
All right,
but
I wasn't there,
I think
but-
I do remember that there was an upfront price, and then the 5-year price
So
was an offering.
Yeah, so the statute says that you've got to pay it all in the same year, or is it 5 year? There's a higher percentage rate in the statute where you can pay a penalty as an assessment. What the Drainage Board has done is created by its own local authority a resolution that says the general drain fund will basically pay your assessment, but in return, you're signing a mortgage that you're going to pay back at the rate of 5% to the county. So that's, you can either follow the statutory method, which if you got a bunch of money in hand is cheaper because you pay 0 interest, right? But if you don't want to sign a mortgage and you can't pay it all up front, the Drainage Code gives you an option to not sign a separate agreement, but you're assessed and you pay penalties of 10% per year, I think it is. So,
Right, so it's not free money for 5 years.
no,
You're
it's
saying.
5%.
Okay, but according to these estimates here, I'm pretty certain that they are 20%, 40%, 60%, and 80% of the total price. It doesn't have anything built in there for 10%, the
Right.
penalties.
Well, I think the general
If it's going to
drain,
be a penalty assessed for us not paying that the first year, then these statements that were provided to us are totally wrong. They don't say
I
anything
wasn't
about
there,
a
but-
penalty.
but
Anybody else
I mean,
familiar with that?
if you pay your bill, then you're not going to pay a penalty. But if the 5% interest is something that they've made available because the statute calls for 10% interest.
I think I can do this one in my head. Annual reconstruction collection, 5-year, is 5 times. I don't see anything in here stating that if you choose to accept that 5-year, you're making payments of penalty and interest.
Am I getting something wrong, Zach?
No.
Are you referring to the letter that we sent out, Fran, or are you referring to the spreadsheet? Yeah, the spreadsheet? Yeah. So just for clarity, I want to know which one you were referring to, but the answer applies to both, okay? So the answer I'm about to provide applies to both the spreadsheet that you just held up and also the letter that all landowners received in the mail. Those forms are what we're required to put together by state statute, okay? The billing information you're talking about is through the treasurer's office, and when the penalties that Mr. Massman is talking about and what you were just inquiring about, those come via the bills that you receive from the treasurer's office, and it clearly states on here, you have basically 12 months to pay the entire balance, or if you don't, you can do the 5-year installments, and it shows you what the breakout is with the penalties. And keep in mind that the drainage code is reflective of the other Indiana code, and I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it's consistent with property taxes. If you don't pay your property taxes within a certain, time frame, they also charge 10% penalty. So it mirrors the property tax penalty, is what I'm trying to say.
All right. So now we know it is not an offer to make it in 5 equal installments. It's 5 installments of plus 10% first year, plus 20% second year, plus 30% third year, plus 40% the 5th year. So the cost of this to...
That's not correct. That's not
It's
correct.
not?
No.
What
That's-
part of it is incorrect?
So
The
if-
second year, if I don't pay all of it, if I pay my 20% the first year, the second year still shows 80% owed, okay? So I'm going to get assessed a 10% penalty for that 80%. Am I not interpreting Zach correctly?
Correct. Correct. If the local option that has been created allows for a 5-year payback at 5% interest per year.
Okay, which is a penalty or interest, whatever you want to call it. But it'll be 5%, not the 10%?
No, it's consistently at 5. It's not going from 5 the first year to 10 the second year to...
Right, but if I choose to do that 5-year option, I'm paying the first year just the 20% without any penalty and interest added. Second year, I'm paying the 5% on the full 80%. Third year, I'm paying another 5% on the 60,000, so that's 10%. So the penalty increases with the time period. So I'm just trying to let people know that if they choose that, it's not a benefit to them financially. But it is a hardship
Well,
to,
I mean, it's a
Most of
benefit
us.
compared to the other option, you know.
right, they need to look at the total cost
The
of
cheaper way to
choosing
do it
that
is to pay it
5-year
upfront,
option.
yeah.
All right, let's see if I got another one.
Luckily, right now, 5% is cheaper than 8% what the bank is charging.
It would be, yeah,
So,
depending on how you're borrowing it.
right,
Equity loans, you can get a little bit less than that, I believe. but-
right.
I do have also a question on the estimate. I think in the informal meeting, there was a number of the maintenance fund that had a balance in it that was getting rolled into reducing the cost of this overall project. I don't see anything in here, so I'm assuming the maintenance fund is at zero?
I don't have that right in front of me, but I believe the last I looked at that, you don't happen to have that, do you, Ryan? The maintenance balance. I can get that for you, friend, but off the top of my head, seems like there's about 30,000 in there right now.
That's what it was
Yeah, or 35.
last year.
Somewhere in the, yeah, and we haven't spent much money out of there. So that money would be available to offset
To
any
reduce this
cost of it.
project.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so
But-
this estimated cost that we've already been assessed at is inaccurate by that amount?
No, this is the reconstruction project, and that money's in
Or
there.
two separate projects?
It's two separate
Then, okay,
funds.
Then how do we justify any remainder of this if, and there won't be, if any of it's less, how do we justify that from going to the reconstruction fund to the maintenance fund? Why doesn't it come back to us individuals that paid it? And I know you're going to cite a law, so I'll just leave it without an answer.
Anyone else like to speak? Seeing none? Doug? Or questions on the board?
No particular questions. I think Zach's got something to say or ask.
Yeah, if I may, before we move forward, I would, just some housekeeping and general information. Now, all the members from the public have had a chance to speak. I do want the board to know, and I know Mr. Masson will go into this in just a minute in the findings and orders, but just overview, my office did receive 12 objection letters, and that represent 47% of the benefited acres in the watershed that are opposed or against. So I want the board to know that. And those letters the board should have, and I'm pretty sure Mr. Masson has those. The other thing that I wanted to state for the record is that the petition that was filed represents right at 30%, I believe, of the benefited watershed. So that other 23%, which would be 53% total, so 30% has signed their name to the petition, and the other 23% has, for whatever reason, decided and chosen to remain silent up to this point, with the exception, actually, I want to make one correction to that. Here today, that was true as of this meeting. Mr. Gamble got up and spoke, and Larry, you correct me if I'm wrong, he's still sitting in the audience. Mr. Lutz is in favor of this project, correct?
I don't know if he's in favor, but he said he's got the money to pay it.
Okay, okay, fair enough. What-
There's a difference in that statement.
Yeah, right, I
I'm
understand.
not speaking that he says, but he does have the money, and he'd like to pay in one shot, not this 5-year deal.
Yeah, and he would have the option to do that. And just to elaborate on what Larry just said, when from my testimony here today, when I met Darrell Lutz and Larry Gamble at Darrell's house, and Mr. Butcher was with me, Mr. Lutz told me personally that he would support whatever the majority of the acres in the watershed wanted to do. And so unless that's changed, I'm going to state that for the record today. And that he represents, bear with me just a moment here, I have this written down. Lutz, yes. Mr. Lutz represents right at 80 acres of the watershed. And so that only leaves as far as big chunks of tillable land, the Van Hook Family Trust has chosen to remain silent. They represent 42 acres. So those are the other 23%. Well, subtract the 80% for Mr. Lutz, and then that's the remaining percentage. So I just, for clarity and transparency, I wanted the board to have that information. That's the breakdown. So it's just a little over 50% in favor. So with that said, I'm happy to answer any questions. I think we've answered all the questions for anybody that came up and spoke. All the information's in front of you. We have, just also for transparency, the map that is on the screen currently for all those here with us physically today and anybody that may be joining us online, the red or maroon shaded colors on the parcels represent those landowners opposed. And I can tell you, hold on just a minute there, Ryan, scroll back up. Yeah, just hang tight just one more second, then you can scroll down. The ground in the kind of on the right side of the page, that's mostly represented by the Sparrow family, and I have spoken to the Sparrow family at length over the last couple of years. I have not spoken directly to them recently, but they did send objection letters in, and I do have those, and so I just wanted to state that for the record. I think I have touched base with just about everybody in this watershed at one point in time or another. So that is the representation on the screen today. As I said, again, the maroon is opposed and the blue is in favor. So happy to answer any questions. That's the information that I wanted to present to the board.
So if I heard you correctly, you were representing Mr. Lutz today?
No, I am not. I'm just merely restating what he told me.
And then, so the other blue ones up there, they have something on record stating that they are in favor of this, like we had to file an objection letter, if they file an approval letter? So in getting your percentages figured out as to who's in favor, who's opposed, that is just your thinking of why.
Friend, I just stated that the blue is
Sir, would you
either.
come forward so that we're sure that you're recorded? Thank you.
But while you're walking up, friend, I just stated the answer to your question. What I said was that the blue either has signed the petition or has been verbally vocal here today, or they've remained silent. That's the three answers. So whether you want to take silence as acquiescence, typically that's the way it is. But I'm not arguing with you or debating that. I'm reporting to the board. Those are my findings.
Right, and I'm reading the paper that was mailed out to you, that for our voice, if we're opposed to it, to be heard, we had to physically file an objection letter. Or we lose our right to appeal or oppose this decision that's going to be made. If we have to do that, then why is there silence or verbal acquiescence, or whatever the word is? How is it getting put up there if there's nothing that they have had to provide that shows they're in favor of it? Yeah, that looks pretty good up there, but I don't think it's accurate. Based on, I don't know why remaining silent loses our option to appeal. I don't understand that.
Kind of like going to the voting booth. If you don't vote, you can't complain. So if you're not voting here, you're not complaining.
Well,
I get that part.
There's a statutory provision that
But
says
where's
if you
the
want to
approval?
appeal it,
But if we have to write something down to show we're opposed of it, to go on record, how's come the ones that approve it don't have to do the same thing? How can it be assumed?
I mean, that's the General Assembly's decision when they wrote the statute. I think the idea
Back
is
to
that
the
if
law.
you want to take it up to the court, then you should have come to the Drainage Board and say why they shouldn't have done it in the first place, which you've done, so.
Right. And I hope it has some effect.
Did you say that Helen Van Hook was,
Ma'am, please, thank you.
did you say that Helen Van Hook was a
Could you also state your name,
Oh,
please?
Diane Weaver.
Thank you.
Because I was informed she sent in an email of opposed.
Good morning, Diane.
Morning.
Yes,
So I just wanted to double check on that.
Yeah, thank you for your question. It's a very legitimate question, and I have the answer. So, yes, Helen Van Hook and the Warren Van Hook Trust, which has the address, mailing address of 16407 Stony Ridge Drive in Nibblesville, Indiana. Miss Van Hook did send me an objection letter,
Okay.
and it's right here in my stack.
Okay.
What I was referring to is the other property that's listed as the Van Hook Family Trust. I said they were remaining silent.
Okay, I didn't hear the word trust. I heard
Yeah.
Van Hook,
Yeah.
and that
No,
was it.
we received Helen's letter.
Okay.
I have read it, and it's right here. I can show it to you.
All right, that's
Yep.
all right.
Yep, we have it.
Okay. Anything else, Zach?
No, that's all I have.
You can come on up, sir.
Dave Weaver again. One question I have real quick was what Fran pertained to. The way the voting goes, if I understand it correct, like I said, if a person wants to stay neutral, that kind of gets thrown into the yes bin. I guess I'm old school. When you used to go to school, you had 50 people in the class. 10 of them weren't there to vote that day, maybe for a project. It wasn't a case of like, yeah, that vote gets thrown over in yes, or it gets thrown in no. They're not there to vote. And like you were stating, going into a voting booth, that is what democracy is about. You go in, you vote yes or you vote no. If you're not there that day, you're sick or anything, and you don't show up to vote, how can that vote be declared a yes, or how can it be declared a no? It's null and void. It's dead. It's dead in the water. That's what I can't understand. How come if you're silent, it gets put in as a yes? To me, you've lost your freedom.
Nothing else?
No, I'm good.
Doug?
So if you wanted to move forward with the project and not make any changes, the finding in order would be as follows: that the matter came to be heard upon the reconstruction report and schedule of assessments prepared by the Tippecanoe County Surveyor filed on November 1st, 2022. Certificate of mailing of notice of time and place and hearing to all affected landowners was filed. Notice of publication of time and place of hearing in the Journal and Courier, Lafayette, Indiana was filed. Objections were filed. Evidence was presented by the Tippecanoe County Surveyor, and landowners affected were present. A list of those present is filed herewith. After consideration of all the evidence, the board finds that, 1, the reconstruction report of the Tippecanoe County Surveyor and schedule of assessments was filed in the office of the Surveyor on November 1st, 2022. Notice of filing of the reconstruction report and the schedule of assessments and their availability for inspection and the time and place of this hearing was mailed to all those landowners affected more than 30 and less than 40 days before the date of this hearing. Notice of the time and place of this hearing was given by publication in the Journal and Courier newspaper of general circulation in Tippecanoe County more than 10 days prior to this hearing. The legal drain currently consists of 43,680 linear feet of main tile and branch tiles. The present condition of the drain is in need of repair. The drain needs the following reconstruction at present: remove portions of the existing tile network and replace with new tile. The new tile will include approximately 3,850 linear feet of 36-inch diameter tile, 5,288 linear feet of 30-inch diameter tile, 4,412 linear feet of 24-inch diameter tile, 1,500 linear feet of 18-inch diameter tile, 1,037 linear feet of 15-inch diameter tile, and 1,381 linear feet of 12-inch diameter tile, combined with other miscellaneous items. There will be 38,976 linear feet of tile under maintenance after completion of this project. There's now $0 owed to the general drain fund for past maintenance on this ditch. The legal drain drains 1,783.99 acres total. Estimated Annual cost of maintenance is $8,103.70. Estimated benefits to the land exceed repair and reconstruction costs. A fund for reconstruction and annual maintenance should be established. In order to provide the necessary reconstruction and maintenance funding, annual reconstruction assessment should be $107 per acre benefited and a $50 minimum for a 5-year period. This will generate $954,591.45 over the 5-year period. Assuming the reconstruction improvements are completed and the general drain improvement fund has been repaid after the 5-year period, the maintenance rate should remain at $4.25 per acre benefit, and a $20 minimum with an 8-year collection total is established at the August 7, 2013 maintenance hearing. The assessment list filed herewith should not be amended. The assessment list filed herewith is fair and equitable and should be adopted. The assessment should be collected with the May 2024 taxes. Due to the estimated cost per acre, the necessity of the project, the feasibility of the project, the overall cost of the project, and the availability of funds for this reconstruction project, reconstruction financing assistance as provided for under Resolution 2016-01-DB should be made available to the landowners under the conditions set forth in Resolution 2016-01-DB. Now, it is therefore ordered that a reconstruction and maintenance fund be established for the Harrison Wallace number 82 regulated drain. Reconstruction fund is established at an annual rate of $107 per acre and a $50 minimum for a 5-year period, and the maintenance fund is established at the annual rate of $4.25 per acre, $20 minimum for an 8-year period. Maintenance assessments should start after the 5-year period of reconstruction is complete. The schedule of assessments filed herewith are adopted and made part hereof. First annual assessment shall be collected with the May 2024 taxes. Due to the estimated cost per acre, the necessity of the project, the feasibility of the project, the overall cost of the project, the availability of funds for this reconstruction project, reconstruction financing assistance, as provided for under Resolution 2016-01-DB should be made available to eligible landowners under the conditions set forth in Resolution 2016-01-DB.
So, Zach, if I could ask one question.
Yes.
So you had mentioned previously that there was 3 versions. Can you briefly talk about those again that were submitted in the informal meeting?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have them readily available. It's been a while since I've looked at them, but I'll do the best I can. There we go. The mouse should be coming up here, the pointer should be in red. So the first version was basically the full build out, or what we refer to as kind of the Cadillac version, which was basically total replacement of the system, okay? And that was even much more expensive, obviously, than this version. The version that's being presented, which is, so let me explain that a little bit here. So when I say full build out, all of the red lines shown on this map, and including the yellow line, would be all the county regulated drain system, okay? So all the red lines, as you look at this visually on the screen, all the red lines, as you can see in the extremities, plus the yellow line work represents the entire county regulated drain system, okay? So the first proposal was total replacement of all the red and yellow line work displayed on the screen. That would be total replacement of the county regulated drain. The second version, which is the middle of the road version, is the replacement of basically the main tile, which is represented on the screen, is represented by all of the yellow line work, and I'm kind of tracing it with the red pointer now. The yellow line work is the main, the county main of this system, which is the larger diameter tile. And as was described earlier today, I'm circling the area roughly here in the middle. This is the, and then on up into here. This is the worst part of the system, which is dilapidated and fell apart, and as I described in more detail a few minutes ago. The third option was a more truncated version, and I don't remember exactly the details on that. I think it was more or less looking at just some of the system in this area, and maybe on down here and stopping at the county road. I'm sorry, not the county road, but the State Road 25 crossing. But in the informal meeting, and then I also had a meeting with the petitioners just before I requested, a few months ago, before I requested this public hearing. And the folks that signed the petition indicated they wanted to go ahead with this middle of the road version. So I hope that helps explain it.
And you mentioned that the third version is simply just a Band-Aid until.
Yes, and the reason why is because, and I'm going to refer to something Mr. Gamble said earlier, and Larry, I'm not picking on you, but I'm using your testimony because you're the tenant farmer on this ground, and Larry gave testimony earlier. He stated, and we know this, I've been down and looked at this, and we've participated in some of these maintenance repairs also, but the system on downstream from the State Road 25 crossing, which is here, the yellow line work that I'm indicating, which is the Darrell Lutz farm, which Mr. Gamble farms. He stated earlier that this tile is in very poor condition and it's falling apart, and it is. It just happens to be it's not falling apart as bad as it is up here, to where it's actually fell down inside itself and blowing out on the ground and eroding the dirt on the surface. It won't take long for that to start happening because it's already falling apart. The real short version here is that the main tile, as indicated, it has exceeded its life cycle, and the clay and concrete material is falling apart, and it's in disrepair.
And the reason to vacate the 2 fingers?
Yeah, the technical reason behind that, and I'm going to start up here on the upper end, which is up towards the right corner of the screen here. My red pointer should be pointing at that green line here. Is a small diameter tile, number 1. I think it's an 8 or a 10 inch. And the reason why we decided that we thought it would be best to vacate that is because this property and this property is already being served by this branch, and so there's no need to have 2 outlets. They have an outlet already. We felt it was overkill, was the reason. And the same for this one here, this one under State Road 28. This project would be requiring NDOT to pay for a crossing underneath State Road 28. This property these properties can access the county tile via this outlet, and these properties can access the new outlet here. So we felt it was redundant and not necessary is the reasoning for that, Dave.
Jack, right there where you had your marker, where you said it's going to cross,
Here?
right there.
Yes.
Both of those tiles are going to be hooked in
Absolutely.
to the new tile.
Absolutely,
Both
yes.
of those
Absolutely,
fingers.
yes, certainly.
So,
And in your process of figuring out tile size, you add this up to where in case any one of those landowners wanted a filled tile or pattern tile their entire field, there is now capacity to handle that water.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I can elaborate on that just a little bit. Most of these older systems were designed at a 1/4-inch drainage coefficient. And now, and this one's not far from that, it's pretty close to it actually. The industry standard now is 3/8 drainage coefficient, and what we find is when we size them to 3/8, a lot of them kick it up a pipe size, and it tends to shade a little closer to a 1/2 inch. And so it's all these tile sizes that we've sized are between 3/8 drainage coefficient and a 1/2 inch. But we size them for 3/8. So yes, it's much more capacity than what's there.
And in just this past year, with the projects you've worked on, the cost of tiles gone up how much?
Yes, unfortunately, the answer to that, and I'll summarize it with one tile size, and you can get the picture, I think, pretty quick. Before the pandemic and before the inflation that we have seen here recently in the last, 12 to 24 months, we were installing competitive bid 24-inch diameter dual wall virgin material perforated corrugated pipe, and as I said, 24-inch at between $22 and about $26 a foot. Now we're seeing costs between $42 and $48, so it's doubled is the easy answer.
By saying that, down the road, this project's not going to get any cheaper.
No, absolutely not. In my 20 years of doing this, I've never seen these projects get cheaper. So based off of that data, I would have to say no, it would not.
So I'll just add that, obviously, this is, we've heard from a lot of you, and we certainly appreciate everybody's participation in the process. This is one of the things that we're tasked with as the Drainage Board to review. And, during all of these maintenance reconstruction hearings, we do hear a lot from folks, hey, I don't receive any benefit, but, these folks are actually in the watershed. So this is not an easy decision, but I am going to make a motion that we approve the findings and order for the Harrison Wallace drain reconstruction.
Before I potentially second it, are you going to take a look at AU, as the gentleman brought up, is that one still in the watershed or not, before we proceed?
The short answer is yes, we will evaluate it, but as I stated earlier, unless there is significant reason and justification for taking it out, it would stand as is, because I know that the surface hydrology and the contours show that land draining, as I said before, into this watershed or to the south and southeast or to the east. Or, I'm sorry, southwest, southeast, or east. But I will look and verify if there's any culverts, if there's not any culverts, road cross-section. Even with that, if the road is acting as a dam, as Mr. Carlson stated earlier, there very well may be, and my guess would be that there's a private tile in there somewhere. There's a surface conveyance, a private tile that may be carrying groundwater into this system, which would cause it to remain in the watershed. But I will look at it, and I can get back to everyone on that. But like I said, it'd have to be real solid justification, because we'd want to be able to pass a red face test with any other landowners.
But also saying this out, thinking out loud, this tile was originally put in 1902?
Yes, I think so, according to my
So
report.
it's lived 120 years. I think it's time to replace it, so I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the motion passes. The project moves forward. Any other business to be brought?
I have none.
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.